Okay, so I didn't exactly know where to pick up at, so I figured I would just get started. There are a few things I need to go over for this week. Where we are, I think we're in week 5, but technically week 4, depending on you look at when we actually started. Technically, I don't know, depending on how you want to look at it. I like to look at it as a bad memory. Anyway, this week we're going to be talking a bit about pipelines and how they work within your business or within your system. And yeah, it's pretty much what we use as the guideline and roadmap for the company over at OVFX or pretty much any place. So I pretty much want to talk about some things in terms of when you're establishing what type of pipeline you want to use or create for your own endeavors. It's just something to look at and take in consideration. So I figured I would do that, and then also talk a little bit about the business plan news. They begin being accepted today, and there is a. Let's see here. Let me pull this off right. Pull this correctly. Sign it. Should have been in the first place. All right. So, yep. As we said, we started taking them September 25th, and I'll have it open and available till the 16th. So if there are updates or changes that you want to place into it, please do so. I'll keep it open. I didn't leave it a number of retries that you could put in there. I have it as a setup as unlimited. I'm finally getting a feel for how this system works. It's not that bad actually. It's pretty cool. So as the weeks go by, and I'll get better at it. I'll try to get a little bit better before then, but at least we can have an area to actually add assignments and add them in and start to communicate that. I'd say the biggest thing right now is data size. I'm granted 2 terabytes of size, so I've been transferring out um, recordings very quickly. I'm going to end up having to do that. I've already had to do it once, so if anybody needs week 1 recording or anything that I went over on that, let me know and I can post that. Um, it was suggested that I start throwing up some of these videos on a secured YouTube channel, so I think I'll give that a try. Just need to find some time. Maybe it gets a chance over the weekend I can get to do that. So I'll be sure to give that a go. But nevertheless, I'll start uploading these in a bit more of snippets as opposed to larger chunks because of our size. All right, so that being said, let's get to it. Let me stop wasting time. All right, so when we start doing out a pipeline or business plan here, when I brought out, I pretty much laid it out. Said you could look at the situation in terms of steps, breaking down, and I believe I might have also gone over this over a previous video about how to break up or chop up the vision of your or dissection of a said company. So this way, I think you can digest a little bit easier. So for some of you that needed a little bit more of a guideline work, I hope this helped out a bit more. Um, and in terms of like the time, I put that in there just as a suggestion as how much time it should take or that you should take in putting it in there. Just certain things that you just don't have to toil over it. Some things you just are what they are. And as I was explaining to some folks, I said, there'll be a little bit of light market research in some instances. So for some of you that have already started tuning in, bravo, 10 submissions already. So we're going to actually start looking those in, and over the weekend I'll start pulling those down and taking a look at those. So very good on you. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward setup for anybody that's actually stuck or doesn't have a full idea of what we're looking for. It's not that serious and kind of honest when it comes to business plans. It's kind of great. They really don't have a. It depends on who it's for. You really don't necessarily have to have a format or form layout for it. It's one of those things now. If it's going in front of venture capitalists or group, obviously there's a level of polish and certain things that you need to have to cover. But if it's just a general idea at first, you can just get that general idea down and get it on paper, and then you can start to format around it as it goes. So when you're making these type of plans, you really don't necessarily have to like adhere to any particular structure. Just steps that you would want to take into consideration as you're building it. The first business endeavor I think I went off on, it was more of a running joke, and more than anything else. And we pretty much started with a platform of a couple 3D models that we turned into a board game, and then considered seeing if we can make digital assets out of it that we can sell online. Eventually, we ended up doing that. Somebody actually bought that stuff. It's kind of neat, but yeah, it is that type of thing. All right, so anyway, let's get to this part here. So, in terms of your pipeline, and you're talking about the type of game you want to make, you also want to consider what's the type of end game you're talking about. Like, what's the final product? What's the platforms you're working on? Those platforms being, is it a PC title? Is it Steam only? Is it a early access game that's going to grow and develop a community and have that community contribute to it over the course of a year or so until you actually have a final launch? There are a number of different ways to do it, but that's one. Another consideration is, are you going on console with consoles? If what type of relationships within the console community do you have? That type of setup. Typically, for instance, at OVFX, we've got a beat 'em up that we've been working on the side. Let me see if I can cool party game, Coolie her. No, I'm seeing everything but that. Oh, wait a minute. No, I was hoping I could find some footage of it, but I had mentioned this before, and I might have even shown it, but we had a let's see, I think this might have been one of the VR tests we did. This is kind of old. Yeah, we ended up playing around and doing some VR tests with some of the assets. Sony had granted a VR headset with us, but we had some challenges getting the whole thing to work, so we ended up doing this type of setup. It's not the greatest here, but yeah, this was our first pass at actually just getting the goggles and getting some of the motion and tracking to work, and even making sure that we could get it to look like something. So these were very, very early tests that we were doing uh, for the VR title. And kind of funny, the VR title wasn't even the main thing that we were um, trying to go with in terms of like game stuff. We were a movie studio. It just so happens we had some spare time in between doing some of the shots that we took Unreal Engine's um, the VR settings and started taking some of the character assets from the actual movie and res them down a little bit and used them as assets for this VR title. So one of the things that we wanted to do, or definitely wanted to do in terms of like making Kulapari a digital movie, was be able to take assets like this and use them for more than just the movie. We can take these very assets that are in the film and transfer them into something like the VR shooting title that you see right here. So they were all just some early tests that we had, but it's kind of like what are the goals of your studio? What are the ideas that you want to get across? What's your roadmap and what's your strategic plan to start some of this? And who do you have on staff that you can count on to start to develop and create certain tasks for your ultimate vision? So the games that we were looking at was one thing. So we really played with that a lot. It was kind of fun. But yeah, the VR one, the other one we did was more like a Ninja Turtle style beat 'em up. Let's see. Do we have it? No. I've just got. I'm looking for it here, and all I see are memes of Guy Fieri. That's Nicole. I blame Nicole for that. She is a graduate of UBolt as well. All right, I don't see it. All right, so let me just move on here. Okay, so we take in consideration that what are the platforms you're working on? What's the intellectual property in part? Are there toys involved? Those type of things. Like for instance, I am using, this is a Bogodo is what we call 'em. And this little, uh-oh, didn't mean to do that. Uh-oh. It's always something. I should have done that. Let's see if I can get that back. There we go. All right, so this fella here, we call them Bogodos. They're like a mixture between a lizard and a dog type situation. Nevertheless, we're going to do some prototypes of the Bogodos and print them so that we can send them to a couple of our connections out in Los Angeles. It's just a little shelf reminder of some of the characters that are being developed with the project that we've been in discussions with. So this fella I've been growing and did a few prototypes for. This started as a 3D model sculpted in ZBrush. That it was done. Hold on a sec. There we go. It was a model that was done in ZBrush. I keep losing my screen there. All right, there we go. It was around 20 million polys when we're all said and done. I don't know if you can really. If I zoom in a bit, you can kind of see the layout or the geometry of it, but it's incredibly dense. For this project, it was okay to be, and I really wanted to take and get of it as much bed space as possible to make a nice big version of it. So went and printed out a version of it. It was pretty successful, and so we're gonna print a few more of these before we get out to Los Angeles next week and Seattle, and I will be out next week for Unreal Fest. So I will also be in communication, and I'll put up a heads up and in the announcements and the emails to remind folks about that. So anyway, we take these type of models and we'll bring them into something like Chitterbox and do a slicing of it. Take that slicer to the 3D printer, and then we'll start making some prototypes of it. So like I said, it's one of those things about what is your platform and what is the final product and the in-game intention of your platforms. What are you looking to do with it, type of stuff, right? So just things that can take consideration. So I'm going to end this as part one, then we'll see you in a little bit.